Morning, everyone. How's everyone today? Yeah, kind of slow, right? I was talking to Ted last night, wherever he is, and we were talking about it's kind of nice having a more intimate setting because it's just, you make friends. So I feel like we've made friends. Do you feel that way? I know you want to break out in song, like "Thank you for being a friend," and the Mentalist last night. That was great. I was talking to my boyfriend, and I said, "Yeah, I don't know if he's a magician." And I just don't get the trick, and that's why I don't get it, or really he reads minds and I don't get it because of that, or it's a little bit of both, so I don't know. But the point is we don't get it. So that was really great and entertaining. And it was also tough for me because I'm Canadian, and there was a federal election yesterday, like we were electing our president. I know, because who cares, really? But just so you're caught up, Justin Trudeau won a majority in Canada and is the new Prime Minister, and the Jays beat Kansas City, which is also very important to me. So you are caught up on the most important things this morning, and we are good to go. Okay, so we're going to talk about innovation this morning, and just want to share our experience around creating an innovation hub. And I thought I would start with this quote, which you all know, but I really love it. It is not the strongest species that survive, nor the most intelligent, but the ones most responsive to change. And so if we think about the ones most responsive to change, we think about companies like Uber, who are now the world's largest taxi company, but they have no cars. And what about Alibaba out of China, who is the most valuable retailer and they own no inventory? Or Facebook, that is one of the most popular media sites but has no content. And what about Airbnb, largest accommodation provider, and they have no buildings? And so these are examples because I feel like we always have to remind ourselves that we can't get too comfortable in what we're doing and how we are doing it. And I was talking to someone, we interviewed someone who had worked for Delta hotel chain, and she said she was in the marketing department, and they had all their competitive information, and they knew exactly what was going on with all their competitors. And she said, we did not see Airbnb coming at all. Kind of just like, boom, hit them. And I think sometimes in seniors housing, we sort of feel very safe. Like we know our competitors, and we know what's kind of out there. And it's a good reminder to say, you know what, maybe we don't know what might happen in the future to our sector, and we need to be aware and open to change and to the things that might happen. And there's a lot of trends that are going on as we think about our sector and how it might relate to the future. And so transparency, for example, transparency is going to be increasingly important to, we're going to have like TripAdvisor for seniors housing, and people are going to be able to post their reviews and rate the food, and people are going to comment and say, I had a terrible experience, and you're going to have to watch those sites and put your comments back, just like TripAdvisor, because transparency is going to be so important. And on demand, so when you think about, can people book their tours like any time of the day or night, 24/7? Are we with the program on being on demand and being online so that anyone can do what they need to do and interact with us on their timeline, not on our timeline? And, we think about how we're building and how we're creating an environment for folks. And people want, they want accessible, good design. They want things to maybe be funky, to look nice. And the beige and some of the standard things we have maybe won't cut it in the future. People want something that's a little more upbeat. They want things that are accessible to them. And what about choice and control? So you think about who's been on Virgin Airlines lately? Anyone? So who's been on an airline recently? Okay. All right. So you're with me. So the airline, like they come down with the cart and your knees get knocked off and everything. So, and then they do that kind of twice if it's a longer flight, and once, right? So Virgin, you just punch in your order on your tablet in front of you, and you say, I want a glass of wine, or I want a sandwich, or whatever, and you're just queued up. So you just get your food or your drink in order of when people put it in, and you get it when you want it, and you don't wait for the cart to go up and down. Now, that's really interesting because it's the same labor cost, right? You still just have the two people with the cart, but they're doing it in a different way, and it's way better for the consumer. It's way better for the client because we feel like we have more control and more choice in that situation. So think about some of these mega trends that are happening around us and think about how they impact and how they apply to your organization. So just really briefly, because nobody knows our company, and just to put a little bit of context, we have all kinds of stuff, seniors apartments, independent living, assisted living, memory care, long-term care, and we have about, directly or indirectly, about 47,000 employees and 500 sites in Canada, the US, and the UK through various holdings. And we have a vision that was created by our new CEO, and it has these 3 pillars, and one of them was innovation, and we needed to bring that to life. And so one of the things that was sort of my job was taking that and pulling it apart and saying, well, what does innovation even mean? And to me, innovation has a lot of components, right? There's what we think of, and if I start on my circles over on the far right, on the incremental, and I think this is the one that's sort of safer. This is the one where you might ask your staff, do you have any ideas? And they find a way to do something better, or make it easier, or make it faster. And so that's all good, right? We want to know from our staff how to make improvements, and we need a channel for that to happen. And then I also wanted to think about how do we interact with strategic partners around innovation so that we can leverage other people who are doing this and are thinking about it all the time versus what we're thinking about, which is our residents and their families. We also wanted to think about how to invest and not put a lot of money into this, but think about, could we take some free cash flow and think about how we could invest in future innovations that would impact the aging population? And then how do we think about piloting things and trialing new technologies, new products, and new things that might come out? And how do we do that efficiently? And then how do we pick the ones that work and how do we scale them? So this was sort of the challenge before the company. And I just want to walk you through a little bit about what we did. And please talk to me. It's like lonely up here, and you don't have to wait till the end to ask questions. You can interrupt and we can have a conversation. So in terms of the journey, I used to run one of our divisions. We had a home care division, and it was divested in May. And I was really hoping for a package, but unfortunately I didn't get it. And I got a new job, which was this VP of innovation, which I really had no idea what it was. I sat around for 2 weeks going, what am I supposed to do today? But okay, eventually I figured it out a little bit. And so this is the good thing now that I'm more into it. And I also have the IT department under me. So we appointed a senior executive in charge of innovation, and that was me. And the reason that was important is that people can't do this on the side of their desk. If there's nobody accountable in your organization to actually be thinking about it, that means nobody in your organization is thinking about it. Because when I was told, you are now accountable and your performance bonus is going to be tracked on innovation, I was like, whoa, okay, I got to figure this out because I want my bonus. And so you start thinking about it, and you start talking to people, and you start finding out what the heck is going on in this space, and you learn a lot, and you start to, become more informed. And so that's something you can think about is anybody in your organization in charge of thinking about innovation? We did the next step, which is we gathered input internally and externally, and I'm going to share a little bit of the insight from that. And we also, I looked for experts. I am not an expert in innovation. There are a lot of other people who are. And I just, I love LinkedIn. I just find people, I cold call them, listen, I need help. Who are you? You have innovation in your title. You have to talk to me about that. And there are companies, there's a company called StageGate International. They work with huge companies, Procter & Gamble, and they help them with their product development, streaming and framework. And so we engage them to just help us out on how can we build a framework for innovation in our organization. And we started at 0, but we needed to very quickly get this thing ramped up. And so that's what we did, and I'll talk a little bit more about that, about building the framework. And then my favorite thing is, you know what? In the end, it's not going to be perfect, and who cares? I'm a Virgo. Who's a Virgo? Anybody a Virgo in this room? Come on, be proud, Virgo, right. So we are very anal retentive, and we're like really critical, and we're perfectionists. We're awful. Like if you read horoscopes, we're the worst one. It's like you don't want to be with a Virgo. That's what I was. But then, in work, it doesn't work. It doesn't actually work to wait for something to be perfect. It never is. So I've learned over my career to just let things go and just do it. And I think there's a big element of being willing to make mistakes and being willing to try something and let it fail, but we learn from that failure. And I think that that's a really something important to think about. So one of the things, again, that I did is I did a survey. I sent out a survey to about 80 of our sites. We started with one of our divisions, our long-term care division in Canada, and we sent out a survey, and we got a pretty good response rate. About 400 people came back to us, and what was interesting for me about this was the difference between what the staff said was important to them to innovate in, and what the families thought we should be innovating in, and what the residents thought. And that was the biggest insight, is we cannot think that we have all the answers. We must work hard to continually have a dialogue and engage our residents and engage our families in how their future how it looks. And so, for example, our staff, falls prevention came out very high. That was one of the top things. So staff were thinking and worried about falls, and that's what they wanted to see innovation in, which is great. And I could have stopped with the staff, and that maybe would have been our list of things to innovate in. But when we talked to family members, guess what they cared about? They cared about communication. They wanted to figure out a way to communicate better with the residents. They wanted to be able to communicate with their loved one. They wanted to be able to communicate with their staff. And I'm just showing you a couple of graphs, but there was a lot of commentary that was in this that gave a lot of insight. And so that was really interesting. And then we said, okay, well, what about residents? Well, residents cared about the things that had an impact on their dignity and independence. They cared about incontinence. So they were interested in how could we innovate around that area so that they could, take care of themselves and their personal needs more. So very, very interesting information that we gathered from this survey. We also, I went out to resident council meetings and family council meetings so I could talk directly to people and say, tell me some things that are a barrier to you or something that isn't going as well, and where could we innovate for you that would be meaningful to you? And so we sort of gathered all this data and took a look at it. And for our long-term care is more akin to your skilled nursing facilities in the U.S., so it's more acuity than obviously independent or assisted living. So these are the 6 things which would be different if we did this survey in our assisted living or independent living side, but for the more acute side, these are sort of the 6 areas that bubbled up. But again, as I mentioned, interesting where the differences were on the staff caring about falls, wound care, and the communication for the families, and for residents it was incontinence and dementia, recreation, those kinds of things. So what this helped us do was identify the priorities. Can't boil an ocean. Innovation is big, it's huge, there are a million things going on, and you need to figure out in your organization what are the areas that you want to hit. Maybe there's only 2, maybe there's only 1, maybe there's 10. Whatever makes sense for your organization. We settled on 6. We thought we can kind of handle 6. These are going to be 6 things that any innovation that we're going to invest time or money or energy in, we want it to align to these 6 priority areas. So that was an excellent first step, is to identify that. And then the next phase that we worked on was looking at some tools. So I don't expect you to read this, but it's more to say, Okay, so when things come at us, and you will have this as well, right? You will have phone calls from whether it's vendors or academic institutions, or there's all kind of places that things can come into your organization, and you have to find a way to triage these. You have to find a way that makes sense to say, this is a yes, this is a no, it's going to go to the next step. So is it a strategic fit for your organization? Does it meet the priorities that you set against your innovation agenda? If yes, okay, it's going to go to the next phase. So we created a triage scorecard that allowed us to do that. It was like phase 1, the first step. And then if it made it through that filter, it went to another filter. And the next filter, again, was developed in collaboration with the management team from our long-term care division. And it looked at a number of parameters, including value for money, the amount of effort that would be required. Would it be able to engage our employees? Would it be able to increase resident satisfaction? And we did our best guess at measuring, giving these actual scores, whether it was 0, does it get 0 because it doesn't do anything for that particular question? Does it get a 4? Does it get a 7? Does it get a 10? We scored this. This is a little bit tedious, and you know how all your managers are ADD and don't want to do this stuff? Yeah, like I locked them in a room and said, you are doing this for me, because otherwise everything's just, oh, let's try this. Like, no, let's have some discipline and let's really try to make sure that we've done this in a way that we can go back and say, this is why we chose to go down this path. So again, these are all scorecards that were developed and helped us to funnel. And if I think about this, and then these are just all tools. Sorry, I'm going to go ahead and go back. So I wanted to go through this. This is sort of helps depict everything that we were trying to do in innovation. Over on the left, you have a whole pile of places where ideas come from. They might come from your peers. They might come from your staff. They might come from academic institutions. They might come from an ecosystem of partners that you have. And then what do you do with them? How do you filter? How do you test them against strategy and test them against financial, and then move them into prioritization so that, yeah, you can say, you know what, let's pilot this. Let's take a couple of our sites and let's try this product out and see if it works. And then if we're interested and it makes sense and it works, we can scale it. And that's ultimately what we were trying to do, is create a framework to make this happen in a way that was smooth. It's not perfect yet. Remember, I just got this job in May, so it's been like, we've had to do some work, but we're getting this underway. I wanted to talk a little bit about strategic partnerships. So this has been really, really great for us. It's been a wonderful way to connect to other ecosystems. These are few of the partnerships, and I'll just point out a couple of them. So who is familiar with Aging 2.0 out of San Francisco? All right, if you have never heard of it, I would recommend that you take a look at their site. So Aging 2.0 was sort of incubated about a couple years ago, about 3 years ago, and they are creating an ecosystem for aging-related innovation. They bring together capital and industry, companies, organizations, and startup entrepreneurs and organizations interested in looking in creating, building new products and services and technologies in this space. So this ecosystem, they just did a pitching event in 30 countries. So there might have been, or 30 cities, I'm sorry. So you might have had one in your city. We sponsored the one that happened in Toronto. There's about 200 people there. It was a really, really great event. There were 8 pitches that happened. So, people came up and showed their product or services and tried to get attention. We brought residents from our sites. They had reserved seating at the front. So we had 8 residents who had special voting rights and got to talk about and ask questions to these entrepreneurs and startups. And it was really, really fun and super exciting. And, it's so great that I feel like we have this convergence of seniors being sexy. Isn't that great? You're now in an industry that is really sexy, so that's good. And the Shark's Tank, and in Canada, Dragon's Den. So these the new excitement around entrepreneurialism and entrepreneurs being something that people are saying, yeah, that's cool. And so you have a lot of entrepreneurs thinking about the senior space. And so the ecosystem of Aging 2.0 is trying to bring this all together. And having plugged into this has made my job a lot easier because they can just feed me ideas, they can feed me updates on what's going on in innovation. They have a newsletter that comes out once a month, and it's chock full of kind of all the things that are happening around the world around seniors. So that's been a really great ecosystem. Another one that I'll just mention, and I don't know if there's an equivalent in the United States, but in Canada, we have a consortium that has said, you know what, academic institutions vie for research dollars independently all over the place. A consortium was put together of all colleges that have an aging lab or an aging department. So if the institution has a specialty in that area, they join this consortium, they went after money as a consortium, they got a whole pile of money because, you know, governments like that. It's like a one-stop shop. So what we've done is we've said, you know what, we're not doing any other research other than through this funnel. So it's cleaned up a whole bunch of noise that was happening at our sites where they would get asked by individual local institutions, and now it's just a lot easier and we can leverage this relationship. So in your area, I know that there's like Chicago, I've talked to a lot of incubators. There are incubators for seniors now percolating up all over the place. There might be one near you in your local area. I know there's one in Chicago, there's one in Pittsburgh, there's all kinds of these happening, and that might be another place where you could just connect to folks who are interested in innovation in our sector. So these are another thing that I thought I would share is, and again, this is all very practical stuff. The team in the operators said, you know what, we have to make sure, how do we pick sites that get to pilot things? And this is what they came up, they said, you know what, there's 3 key clinical indicators, you know, falls and wound management and antipsychotic drug use. They must be at least meeting the external benchmarks in those 3. So they have to be a high-performing site. They have to be within budget by 2%, and they must be motivated and have a desire to do a pilot. The group talked about, well, really, maybe we should pick the lower performers because they really need the innovation. But in the end, they said, you know what, the lower performers need quality improvement initiatives. That's different than doing a pilot of something that not be able to be scaled until a year from now or 2 years from now. So in fact, they decided that the sites that would qualify to do a pilot or to be involved in innovation would be their high performers. You need to also decide that so that it's, again, this is all transparent. I have been communicating with all of the executive directors, about 80 of them, and they all know that this is the criteria. So guess what? People want to have their quality indicators and their budget on track because they want to pilot things. They want to tap into what's going on in innovation. So it's created this wonderful competition amongst the sites in driving them to improve, because we're going to look at this every quarter to see, okay, well, who's kind of available now to try some pilots. There was also a little bit around some guiding principles, trying to have diversity, try not to use the same home so that a home is only running one pilot or doing one thing at a time. So that was another one. So this is something you might think about. Is there any guiding principles or criteria that you would like to utilize? So the fun, so that was a lot of hard slugging, if I could call it that. So if I bring you back, so we assigned someone who is accountable for innovation. We looked both internally and externally. We did surveys, we interviewed residents and families, we interviewed staff, we interviewed experts, we hired someone to help us create those scorecards and the triage. So we built all this up. We created strategic partnerships, we got the flow going through those partnerships, so everything was sort of ready to go. And right now, we are basically in the process of launching, in the sense of taking a few, and I'll just give you a little bit of an example. So Sensusure, I'll just tell you about this company. So this company was founded by 3 25-year-olds. Honestly, it's like brilliant guys in various university areas like biochemistry and other things. They have developed a sensor. The sensor is attached to a incontinence product, and it automatically alerts the nurse's station when it needs to be changed. So it avoids checking at all. So you don't need to check. There's just an automatic thing, which helps with dignity, and it manages all kinds of stuff. These guys, this is no joke, they wore diapers with the sensors in them all day long. They measured, they weighted these. Like, you cannot believe how much work they have done to develop this product, improve the prototype. So we did a first phase pilot with them earlier in the spring, and they're moving now into phase 2 with a better prototype. And their vision is to take this sensor and make it usable for everything. Make it usable for wound management. So how many times do you turn the person? It's an alert, and it'll be on a dashboard. It could also have GPS in it. It could have all kinds of things, and it could just be in one product. Very, very, very cool. This one, active protective. So these are airbags attached to your hips. So it's very interesting. So it's like kind of like a belt for people that are at high risk and might fracture their hips. And it senses when the person is falling, and it deploys the airbag on the hips so that they, if they fall, then they don't break or fracture their hips. Again, like very, very, very interesting things that we're thing. Music is a big one. So there's all kinds of, and some of you have probably seen some of these around making the music really attuned to, especially for folks with dementia, find out from their families what their favorite music was, what era did they sort of grow up in, and put their playlist together that relates to that. And they come alive. It's a really, really beautiful, gorgeous thing. So these are just a few companies that we are working with. And again, there's a huge ecosystem out there of new products, technologies, and services for our sector, and it's super, super exciting. The other thing that I wanted to just mention a little bit about was the team. Here's me right there. I know I look pretty good. This can't be, I used to say this all the time, like, don't talk about, I am not the innovation person. I am a party of one. Like, I am the only person in my department. It's really lonely. And so I can't be the one that people think about when they think about innovation. And so I've really, really been working that everyone is an innovator. Everyone. We all have to be thinking about this in a way that keeps us open to change and open to making mistakes. One of the things that I did was I brought together, we had done a couple of pilots, say 6 months ago, and I brought those teams together, the people that were involved in them. It's fascinating to do a debrief of pilots and hear the things that went wrong. So some of the things we learned from pilots that went wrong is that staff felt that they were not communicated with on what the next steps were. So they felt like they were always doing things in the moment, but didn't understand like what the objective was and what the big picture was, and they were just being given instructions sort of on a as need to know basis. I'm sure that doesn't just apply to innovation. That's probably something that we do that we could do a better job of generally. The other thing about the pilots was not stopping them when it was clear that it wasn't working. So we had a product that we were piloting, and it was for turning people. So people had to wear this. It was like this big belt, and then it would let us know, when they had to be turned, and there would be like a red alert if they hadn't been turned in more than 3 hours or whatever the protocol was. So the problem was that the residents hated it because it was this big, uncomfortable belt, and the staff felt awful putting it on them. So what ended up happening is they would just take it off, not turn it off. It would send all these alerts. They didn't know how to turn the alerts off. So apparently it was like all quite disastrous, but we didn't have enough sort of playback of this feedback in real time to go back to that entrepreneur and say, you must change this prototype. I know we said we agreed to a 3-month trial with you. We're not doing 3 months. Like, it's not working right now on week 1. So we're going to cut you off and get you something different. So these are the kinds of things that you need to, again, bring the team in and make sure that people are informed and they know what's going on and that sort of thing. So it's a team effort and everyone is part of it. And I really, 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 we need to do a better job. I need to do a better job. How do we involve our residents? Right? How do we stop doing things for them and get them engaged in a conversation that sees them being part of the decision-making process and getting that voice to us, and as well as with their families. So that's something that we're definitely working on and want to improve for sure. So I have a few questions for you, and I thought, because I've talked long enough, and it would be nice for you guys to engage with each other, and so if you're at a table by yourself, you have to move to a table with other people so that there's at least two people at a table. So what I would like to do, and we won't do this, we only have a couple of minutes, is you could just talk to each other a little bit about some questions that I have, which is, like, who is thinking about organization in your organization? Who is thinking about it? Whose role is it part of? And how do you get ideas from staff and from residents right now? Do you have a way for them to tell you about ideas they have or stuff, technology, products that they've seen out in the marketplace? Do you have an ability to pilot and test things that make sense and that you can evaluate and that you can look to what the results were? And then another great area of innovation, and this is something we haven't done yet, and it's wonderful that there's vendors here. We don't have a way to collaborate with our vendors and suppliers. Your current vendors and suppliers are probably thinking about innovation, or you could push them to be thinking about innovation, but we don't have a good way to have that dialogue and find out what are they thinking about, what's on their product development pipeline, and do, is it aligned to what you want to do? So just for 2 minutes, chat amongst yourselves around anything that's happening in your organization, anything you've learned from today that you think you can incorporate and bring back to your organization. Just have like a little 2-minute chit chat.
Way back, I used to front like Andrew at Mechanicsburg, Anchorage, Dar es Salaam. New York, Champagne, Disco, Jason, LA, San Francisco, but actually Oakland and Alameda. Girls in Berkeley with the communist leader. I was in tune with the boombox and Walkman. I was a horrible girl that was back then. Gloves and love, the wisdom teeth, I love what you on about.
All right. Yeah, I heard snippets of some very good conversations. Would anyone like to share anything from your chat? Someone must share. Yes, please. Yes, you can take the slide home, please, by all means. Yes. Thank you. Yeah. So you see gaps, and yeah. Okay, that's great. Good. Very good. Excellent. Others? Anyone on this side? Comment or something that you shared from your organization? Insight?
Over here.
I got nominated. I shared the Innovators Toolkit book, which I don't know if anyone's used it, but it's very boring, but it's amazing. And one of the things they talk about is the job to be done. So we were talking about, one of the examples is, what's the job to be done of a lawnmower? What's the job to be done of a lawnmower? Cut grass. But if you think it's just to cut grass, all you do is make a better blade. If the job of a lawnmower is to make your lawn look beautiful, you might think of a slower growing grass seed. You might think of a watering system underneath it. And so you have to look really deeply, what's the job to be done rather than just thinking about the product you have.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks, Denise. Anyone else? Okay, awesome. So I'm just going to go back to what I said earlier. I think we can get really caught up about, we don't know, well, I'll just talk about myself. I had no clue what innovation was when I started this job, but in the end, it's like anything else. You can learn it. It's not that complicated, and it is part of everyone's job. If you think about back to the beginning when we talked about the quote, right, and about that the species that are going to survive are the ones that are most adaptive, and we have such a huge responsibility to the clients we serve, don't we? Like, it weighs heavy on my heart sometimes. I think, like, we must innovate. We must do our best to bring the best possible days and moments and seconds to the residents who we serve in our homes. It's our obligation, it's our responsibility. And innovation is such a powerful way to engage and to find solutions that are creative and are different. One of the best things that has happened from doing these pilots has been the response of both staff and residents. They love it. They love it. They feel engaged. They feel there is a purpose. The staff feel like they're doing something different, that they're doing something that's interesting, they're doing something and they're learning from it, and it's just been a really powerful experience, and we're really looking forward to doing more of this. So with that, I'm going to close it off and just see if anyone has any questions for me. Yes?
If you don't mind if I could just give you the microphone.
I'm a little shocked that when you asked the staff what their main concern or issues were revolved around falls, did you keep it to just resident care, patient care? Because I'm surprised they didn't say staffing, consistent staffing, shortage. I was just curious. Did that ever come up from families? Or?
That's a really great question. Staffing did come up more in the commentary. So they were given a list of a whole bunch of categories, and staffing was one. It was like an other. So I agree with you that yes, staffing is definitely one. Not enough staff. The residents in their commentary had a lot of feedback around that. That their biggest thing was there are not enough staff, which didn't completely connect to innovation. I mean, I think there's some elements of that, but yes, that was definitely a popular answer.
Trish, thank you. That was incredible what you've gotten done in 90 days and the time you've been on board. I'm always really impressed in speaking to folks at Revera about particularly the hospitality background that a lot of people have. What are some of the innovations in hospitality that you're bringing to senior communities there in Canada?
Yeah, that's a great question. So one of the things that we've done on purpose is we have recruited executive directors with that background, and we just did we just looked at a kind of a performance measure around people that had a clinical background and the ones that had a hospitality background particularly in the independent and assisted living. And the ones who had the hospitality background scored higher on almost every measure of performance than the ones with a different background. So that was really, really very interesting to us. And so I think that the innovations around it include looking at culinary, especially, so a big focus on food as being something that's really super important when you talk to the hospitality folks. Believe me, they have a big gap around the care component. It's just something that's a big, steep learning curve for them. But I think that where their strength is, and I've seen this in action with the ones who were general managers at Weston or whatever, they are speaking to the residents all the time. They are out of their office. They are walking around. They just kind of have a different flair, like a different personality almost. And so that's probably what I would say is the biggest difference is not so much pure innovation, but actually the way they show up every day is different than a different personality type. And not to say the other one was wrong, but we're trying to measure, we've invested in this, and is it reaping results? And I would say so far it is. Any other questions? Excellent. Well, you've been delightful, and thank you very much, and we'll have a
Thank you,
great trip
Trish.
home.